Warning: this viewer description from what I was going to show you might have some explicit language towards the Chinatown baby boomers from the 1950s, 1960s that they live in from a different era with a different standards. If you're a millennial or post millennial American born Chinese and you're pissed off that they were like what the baby boomers had to say, do me a favor, click away from the video. It'll save you much of a headache, but until then, enjoy this video.
I have a question.
You know what? It's not the technical part. I mean, it's all the logistics.
Alright. I got that book line. Yay. I wasn't expecting to say Nishimoto. And I would say I'm from my parents. But right.
Did you get him to sign your book, Wong?
Yeah. Well, that self-completed. Alright. It's gonna start pretty soon. Actually, it does start.
I read it.
Nothing about the
That is
This is Jane Shannon. We're going to start in maybe about 5 minutes. So we do expect a whole house. All the scenes as best you can.
Well, my daughter.
Yeah, oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's just
Yeah.
Okay. Can anyone hear, can people hear me? Okay, good. Okay, crank up the volume. Okay, so just a brief introduction about CHSA. First of all, my name is Amy. I am the communications manager here. I do design and many other things here at CHSA. I just want to welcome you all to the museum. And we were founded in 1963. We're the oldest organization in the country to promote the contributions of Chinese in America. This year we're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we have a gala coming up on March 31st, in case you're interested and want to support us further. And then you're also in the Julia Morgan Design Chinatown YWC building, which we moved here in 2001, but the building's been here since 1932. And I think as you guys were coming in here, you probably would have seen the photo exhibit that was that we've presenting with the YWCA. That actually gives you a view of the residences. If you go up to the other entrance to this building on Powell Street, there's senior housing that the YWCA still runs, and so this is sort of a nice kind of like inside view of that. And if you're going to hang out here after the talk, please do check out our other exhibits: Chinese American Exclusion Inclusion, and our Frank Wong miniatures, gift shop, all these great things. The t-shirts from the gift shop. We'll just kind of skip it. And I guess we are really happy to have Edmund here. He actually approached us a few months ago to say, hey, I'm publishing this new book, Growing Up in Chinatown, and I really want to work, do something here at CHSA, and it's so great to have all of you here who are from, I guess the same generation. I'm obviously not a baby boomer, but you all are. So glad to be able to hear these memories. I'll just turn it over to you. I mean, obviously, you grew up here, but you're living in Kentucky, right? Yeah. Okay, so turn it over to you.
So we'll make you an honorary bulldog.
Okay. I'm not a millennial.
So you have aged. Instant aging. Well, thank you, Amy, and it's a pleasure to be here at CHSA, one of the top representatives of our community, so it feels really good to be able to stand here and talk in front of you. Some of you were my classmates, many of you contemporaries of all my classmates. We're very much close to the same age. The reason I wrote this book was fairly simple reason. It was to promote and preserve the legacy of Chinatown as we knew it, and of our generation who lived here during probably what I would consider its golden age. Now, Chinatown was here, many years before we ever came around, but it was different. It was an isolated enclave, almost a prison for Chinese. But by the time we came here, it was a pretty nice, happy neighborhood. We could actually go outside of it without too much concern. And we stayed in it, of course. And, it's sort of interesting that if you're outside of the community and you say San Francisco, I'm going to go visit San Francisco. Let's take a trip to San Francisco. What comes to people's minds right away? Chinatown. Cable cars, Fisherman's Wharf, maybe a Giants game or a 49ers game. And that's it. But Chinatown is one of the top things that's mentioned. Okay? I grew up here. Some of you know me. I was born at the Chinese Hospital, 1948, delivered by Dr. Helen Chen. And she was really ahead of her time, I think, back then. Being a minority Chinese physician, and she actually established a very good, sound professional practice, and we owe a lot to her. Then, in order to bring me up to the healthy being that I am now, my pediatrician was none other than Dr. Stanley Louis. Stanley Louis, okay, he was a scary guy, right? You would go in and he might want to give you a shot or something. Man, if you even move, don't cry. You know? Man, I mean, I was already crying when I went in. That was scary. Okay. Anyway, I went to Washington, Irving, did all my 6 years there, went to Francisco for the 3 years, and I went to Galileo for the 3 years. Yay! You know, you guys remember we had O.J. Simpson playing football for us, right? How many games did we win?
Yeah.
I don't think we won any the whole time, even with O.J. But now, what's Galileo? State champs, right? And to be state champions in California, I mean, the size of this state, I mean, that's really awesome. Okay, state champion in Kentucky. I mean, our population is what, a fifth? I mean, it's a lot smaller. So anyway, I graduated from those schools. I finally left Chinatown in, let me think, 1967, because I was going to school and I was going to be pre-med, you know, do that good Chinese thing, go over and be a doctor. All right? I remember when I was a kid, I lived in Panama Alley. Okay, and the garbage guys used to come, and remember in those days they would pour the garbage into the burlap sacks and haul it like Santa Claus, and they'd throw it up on the truck, and they'd jump up and down on it. I told my grandmother, wow, that looks like fun. When I grow up, and she just went nuts. Oh my God, you can't do this. You want to be a Utah, you know? So the heat was on, okay? So anyway, I'm going to college, I'm majoring in biology, like a good Chinese kid, science, math, and all that stuff, because I'm going to be a doctor. But I got kind of restless, went into the Navy, but, you know, in the back of my mind, it was still, okay, doctor. So I volunteered to be in the medical corps, okay, and enlisted corpsman. So I did that. And I came back out, and I finished up school, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I got a job at Chinese Hospital. So I worked there on the wards for a while, and, you know, that kind of made my parents sort of happy, still in the medical profession. Okay, but then, at the same time, I met my wife-to-be my senior year at San Francisco State, and she's a Lofan from Kentucky, which is fine. She had a little bit of trouble with my mom, okay? but ultimately, it was okay. She still said, well, I like your dad better. Your mom made me nervous. To this day. And then we went into the Peace Corps. I taught math science there, and then she said to me, look, you know, I've been out here in California with you, why don't you come to Kentucky with me just for a little bit, and you know, we could move back. Well, that was in 1979, and I never came back, okay? You know, a lot of people ask, oh my God, how is it out in the South and all that, a lot of racism and everything. There wasn't that much. I never really encountered any. Just one time, some guy called me the N-word. And I was like, is that an insult, or do I take that as a compliment? Yeah, don't worry about it. But that's the only thing. And then, of course, when my daughter was growing up, I was a little bit nervous about it. And so I tell her, look, when you go to school, you know, kids are mean and they say bad things to you, just don't pay attention and all that kind of stuff. And so I said, okay, well, I'll toughen you up a little. I said, okay, come on, let's go to the backyard. And I pushed her, and I said, oh, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're different. And she took it okay, because she knew it was me, and she knew we were playing. Then I pushed her I pushed her too hard, and she fell down, started crying. I don't want to do this anymore. So, but the last chapter in the book was her. Okay, and so you can see that ultimately she grew up happily, and she actually enjoyed being Chinese or half Chinese, but she looks very Chinese, so I'm going to call her Chinese American. She looks Chinese American. She grew up well adjusted and happy, and everything turned out fine. Okay, and I think I'm not going to talk about her, what I did, but I'm going to talk about us and what our parents and grandparents did. Most of us have lived pretty good, contented, satisfied, happy lives. We grew up in a nice community. Chinatown was nice and safe. It wasn't that way for our folks. I remember my grandfather, he used to have a police whistle. I'd play with the thing, okay? And he said, you know why I have that? And I said, no. You know, I just thought it was pretty fun. I'd blow the thing up at the house. He said, oh, you know, sometimes when I go out and bad guys come and try to hurt me, so I blow it and get the police. And I really didn't understand what that was about. But he had businesses. I mean, he was a pretty advanced guy. And they were sort of outside of Chinatown, not that far, but you know, you go across Broadway, you go across, what, Bush Street, and then there were problems, and so he always had his police whistle. But, you know, we were fortunate enough not to have to deal with that. Okay, so I'm going to read something by somebody who was a contributor. Oh, what I'm going to read is not in that book, okay, because what I did when I originally wrote it was twice as long as this. Okay? And I submitted the thing to the publishers, and they said, oh, no, it's too long. You have to cut it by half. I think, oh, by half? You know, that's ridiculous. But what I had done was I had written chapters like this. And then between each one of these chapters, I had interviewed people extensively, and each chapter was someone's story. Like Jack Wu, he gave me a whole story. Irene D. Collier, he gave me a whole story. So I alternated the chapters. And so they said, okay, cut it in half. And I thought, well, you know, mechanically that won't be that hard. So I just pulled out half the chapters and I submitted both of them to them, hoping they would take the other one. Because, you know, I felt bad. I mean, the people that contributed to it really bared their souls to me. And I thought they deserved to be represented. And a lot of people wouldn't do it. And I don't blame them because, you know, being Chinese, we're not necessarily all that open. We don't want to do it, which is fine. So I wanted to give these people their due. But the publisher didn't want that half. They wanted this half, which at least I'm glad that most of you enjoyed it and said that it brought back a lot of memories. What I'm trying to do now, and I've already kind of suggested it to some of you, is to try to persuade the publishers to go ahead and do the second half. And I might try to get a few more stories to put in there. And if they don't do it, look for another publisher. Because they'll give me first rights of refusal, so they'll say, no, we don't want it, then I get to take it elsewhere. I think CHSA sometimes does some publishing. Okay, so, but anyway, we'll see what happens. And so I'm going to read you something from a fellow, I'm going to read several excerpts, okay? And since there's former Cafe Post people here, I'll do a kind of a musical-oriented sort of thing with some anecdotes from somebody about Cafe Post. But, you know, again, to show what our parents did, this is from Tommy Lim. Anybody know him? He's optometrist down the peninsula. He's a member of the First Chinese Baptist Church. And he called me up and said he saw that I wanted people to contribute to the story, so he told me all this stuff. And it's just a little bit. And this is about how it was for him and his family at the start. He came to Chinatown, but his family was in Napa, up north. And so Tommy Lim is currently a self-employed optometrist whose practice, Berryessa Optometry, is located in San Jose, California. He finds fulfillment in being active in multiple organizations related to his profession. He has a seat on the board of the Chinatown Community Development Center and serves as a deacon for the First Chinese Baptist Church in Chinatown. And this is what he says. My father, Lim Sai Oi, and my mother, Huey Tai Oi, were married in 1928. He was 18 years old and she was 17. A year after the marriage, he left his young bride in China and came alone to America in order to seek a better life for himself and his future family. That's not that unique. A lot of our parents did that. Okay? Little did he know that it would be 18 years before he would be reunited with my mother. In the late 1930s, my dad opened a grocery store in Napa with 3 partners who were also Chinese immigrants. The store was called Napa Grocery, and it was a medium-sized supermarket. My dad was the produce manager, and he made weekly trips to Sacramento to buy produce for the store. My dad and his partners worked 6 days a week. They would open at 9 a.m. and they wouldn't close until 9 p.m. Very typical. The store thrived through providing excellent value and service to its customers. However, Asians were not accepted in mainstream America at that time. My dad and the store faced racism in the predominantly white community of Napa. Barbershops would not cut my dad's hair. They told him, "We don't want your money." The Napa Register, the town newspaper, would not print the store's advertisements. When the store first opened, my father and the other Chinese partners and employees could not find housing. For months on end, no one would rent an apartment or a house to them, so they wound up sleeping on top of boxes in the warehouse. Fortunately, the store had a small kitchen, so they were able to cook for themselves. So then Tommy comes along as a young boy, and he says, "It wasn't hard to spot our family in Napa. The ethnic makeup of the town back then was about 90% white, 8% Hispanic, and 2% other. We, of course, were in the other category. In school, we were usually the only Asian kids in class," and he's his siblings. "In fact, I never had an African-American classmate in any of my schools until I was in the 7th grade. Life for me in a small town wasn't too bad as long as I wasn't noticed. I just wanted to fit in and be like the rest of the kids." Okay? Then, he says later, "I will never forget an incident in the 4th grade when I was misbehaving and a male teacher called me a dumb Chinaman in front of the entire class. To this day, I remember that exact situation and how embarrassed I felt. The other kids were laughing, and all I could do was look down at my desk and awkwardly try to laugh it off. This type of situation, fortunately, did not happen often. However, during my youth, I was called Chinaman more often than I would like to admit." Now, the rest of Tommy's chapter is a lot happier because he moves down to San Francisco. And the chapter is basically, "Oh my God, when I got here, I felt happy, I felt accepted with the Chinese people. This was great." And he went to Francisco. I think he came in his 8th grade year. And he enrolled in Francisco, and he was immediately happy. He was so happy he couldn't stand it. So a tough beginning, wound up with a pretty good ending. Here's another story about conflicts with race. This is actually my cousin. Her name is Saki Lee. Her birth name was Wanda. Her brother's name is Jim. And they lived with their single mother on John Street. And one year, I don't know why, had an aunt and uncle in Cincinnati. They owned a laundry restaurant, right? Laundry. And so my aunt, I think she was under a lot of stress, decided to send the kids up to Auntie Pat and Uncle James for a year. So for 1 year, in the early 1960s, Saki Lee and her brother Jim, both born at Chinese Hospital, went to live with their Auntie Pat and Uncle James in Cincinnati. Saki was probably in the 4th grade, and Jim was in the 3rd. My uncle had a laundry. He came back to San Francisco, I think, in the early 60s, and right where the cable car turns up on Powell Street, on the corner was a laundry. It was called James Laundry. That was his. Okay. Overall, Jim and I got along pretty well at school. Now, this is in Cincinnati. Okay, so we moved to Cincinnati, and my cousin is saying, overall, Jim and I got along pretty well at school and around the neighborhood. There was a cute boy named Doug who was my boyfriend. One day, riding on the back of his bicycle, my foot got caught in the wheel spokes, and we tumbled down onto the concrete pavement. My knee was scraped and bleeding, and someone picked me up and took me and Doug to the laundry. When Uncle James saw the mess that I was, he began to scold Doug. Uncle James was a pretty big man, and he was waving his arms around in excitement. I am sure that he looked pretty scary to 10-year-old Doug. And then it happened. Maybe because he felt intimidated, or maybe for some other reason. I won't ever really know for sure. Doug got angry and set out some words that I had never heard before in my life. He yelled, "You're just a ching-chong Chinaman." And he dashed out of the store, laundry. Although the words were new to me, I intuitively knew how nasty they really were. Doug never came around or played with me again after that. I was heartbroken and did not understand any of this. But Auntie Pat and Uncle James, who were always so gentle and so kind, tried their best to console me. They tried to explain to me, oh, some people are just not too smart, and I caught them looking meaningfully at each other. I couldn't be sure, but I just thought that perhaps they knew something that I did not. Another time, one of those big-breasted American girls named Sheila saw a bracelet I had on and said that I had stolen it from her. I told her she could ask my Uncle James if that was true, knowing that she was just trying to bully me. So off she went, and she rang the bell of the laundry. I had already told Uncle James about her false accusations. Being rather overprotective of me, he was already on the warpath in preparation to defend me. He came to the front desk menacingly and waved his arms, and he loudly said to Sheila in his heavy accented English, "You don't know anything. We gave this bracelet to her. You go home." And then, like Doug had earlier done, she also said the same words as she slinked out the door. "Ching-chong, gentlemen." Despite my young age and general naivete, I clearly recognized that she meant to be harsh, unkind, and cruel. Sheila never bothered me again, though. Later, when I tried to ask Uncle James what Sheila and Doug really meant, he and Auntie Pat dismissed my questions. They wanted to be reassuring and said that I should not even think about it. They wanted me to believe that anyone who said the types of things like Sheila and Doug would best be ignored. They were simply stupid people who were unworthy of any attention at all. In the innocence of childhood, protected by the fierce love of too much trusted adults, I readily accepted their wisdom and their reassurance and felt safe. It would be many years later before I could really understand what an intense struggle Uncle James and Auntie Pat really had. They struggled for all those years in Cincinnati, in painful alienation, living in what I had never recognized as a poor and largely hostile white ghetto. They were far away from friends or family. They were completely deprived of the familiarity and the closeness that all Chinese communities strive to provide. They absorbed the taunts, disdain, disrespect, and even hatred that they were always so careful to deflect away from me and Jim. So, again, I feel pretty privileged to have been able to accomplish what I accomplished. I never really had any kinds of encounters like that. Not really. Well, it didn't hurt that I went to almost an all-Chinese school with Commodore or Washington Irving. But, later, as I got older, I got a little bit of it when I was in the Navy. But since I was in the medical corps, they didn't want to mess around with it. Would maintain their health or something. So I think I got off with it that way, too. Okay? So now we'll do something a little different, and I'll talk about Cafe Post. I'm going to talk about it not necessarily from the Chinese point of view, but from an Italian-American kid who joined up. Okay? Munson, you might remember Mark Zanini?
Yeah, we know Mark.
Yeah, he's a musician now. He hangs around. Yeah. Okay, so this is what Mark told me. Mark attended Francisco Junior High School in the early 60s. The school was heavily populated by students from Chinatown. Mark took band classes where he learned to play the trumpet. Mark met and soon became fast friends with two other young trumpet players, ABCs named Gerald and Alex. He didn't want me to use their last name, but maybe Munson, you know who they are. Having the trumpet in common, Alex and Gerald persuaded Mark to join them at the Cafe Post Drum and Bugle Corps. Mark believed that Cafe Post provided him with the type of structure and guidance that kept him out of teenage trouble. This was in 1963, and Mark recalls that he, Gerald, and Alex would remain friends for many, many years to come. Chinatown kind of does that for you. It was a little uncomfortable at first, he says, because I was the only white kid at Cafe Post. I started to feel a lot better when I realized that all these Chinese guys were ABCs and they spoke English all the time. Some of them didn't even know how to speak Chinese. All of them just acted like any other teenager in a marching band or a drum and bugle corps anywhere. Even though Alex and Gerald were my closest friends, I made friends with a lot of the others too. I said there wasn't any Chinese spoken there, but I was wrong. There seemed to be certain words that just couldn't be expressed as well in English as in Chinese. A lot of those were the names of food. The others were the swear words. And I learned them all. Now this one isn't so bad, but it was always funny to us. I like being at Cafe Post a lot because the adult Legionnaires were kind, encouraging, and sometimes a little foul-mouthed. We thought that was pretty cool, though. There was a variety of young people in the Corps. It was co-ed, and not all were the stereotypical Asian A student types. Maybe some were what we would call at-risk youth today. The American Legion sponsored programs like this so that young people could have a place away from home and school where they could respond to the structure and be productive and enjoy camaraderie with their peers. The adults at the post provided the type of guidance, teaching, and leadership that kids our age always need. The structure of Cafe Post was especially good for me because even as I got older, I resisted discipline with my family and teachers, but somehow accepted it in this environment. It was at Cafe Post that I was first introduced to real Chinese food. Our leaders and the other adult post members treated us to nice dinners pretty often. These were not just at any restaurant either. They took us to places like the Far East and Namgyur, and we ate full banquets with the special dishes like bird nest soup, Peking duck, and a lot of other good stuff. I think the Italians and the Chinese are particularly akin in their love of good food and of eating in restaurants. My family background included extensive banquets shared by large groups of people in the home, at church, and at restaurants. As I spent more time on the streets of Chinatown with my friends, I became more comfortable eating at Chinese restaurants on my own, getting dim sum from the little bakeries after school, and learning what my favorite Chinese I'm just going to close off with a little bit more music, and this is about some of the bands, okay? And I talked with Norman Fong on the phone. He gave me an interview on the phone, and he talked about just jamming a little bit. And then I got some information from other people about some of the other bands. I'm pretty sure most of you remember some of the names of the bands, were, let me think. Let's see, Loud the Illusions, what else? The Persuasions was one also. Yeah, anything else?
The agents, the Go Rebels.
Okay, yeah. Anything else? All right, so anyway, this is what Norman says about how he started with Just Jamming, okay? Norman Fong, Just Jamming's been around for so long, everybody kind of takes it for granted now, but this is how he told me that it started, okay? And he said, Norman Fong, the current executive director of the Chinese Community Development Center, is also the lead vocalist and sax player for the long-lived and soul-surviving Chinatown soul band, Just Jammin'. According to Fong, the group first got together informally as 5 musically inclined friends who wanted to play at a house party. It was 1968, and a mutual friend to each of the group's members had been drafted and was on his way to Vietnam. Wong, a 1969 graduate of Galileo High School, recalled, "We weren't really a group or a band at that time. We just got together to play at our friend's farewell party. From that point, though, one thing led to another, and we became one of the many, many Asian American groups that were popping up all over Chinatown during those days. We've been together for almost 50 years now, and I would say that the thing that has kept us united and so close is our friendship. We were all Galileo guys, and we always liked each other. There has been nothing bad enough or strong enough to break us apart. Now, 50 years is a long time, and the band has changed since 1968, but 3 of the original 5 guys are still together. There's me, I'm lead vocal and play sax, Ed Toy, who is our drummer, and Brad Long on bass. We have added members over time, and now we have 10 people. We also have a brass section, too. We still play pretty much the old standards, like Motown hits by performers that include Smokey Robinson and Herb Wells. Smokey Robinson and
Stevie Wonder,
Miracles.
the Miracles.
Yeah.
The Miracles.
And then Gladys Knight and and the Pips. And then he says, we really like Earth, Wind, and Fire, too. We're trying to keep up with the younger generation and have added things by people like Bruno Mars to our repertoire. I think of us as the Chinatown Soul Band, and we have been at it for so long. We can't quit. Too many of our friends, and even our friends, now grown-up kids, want the band. Okay? So the names of just a few of Chinatown's bands, and now I got them here, that were contemporaries of Just Jamming include Majestic Sounds, The Persuasions, Enchanters, Eclipse, The Illusions, and some of the ones you guys said. Okay. According to Jeffrey Chan, who was just 13 when he saw his first Asian American Chinatown group perform, the emergence of Chinatown Band, he says, broke us out of a stereotype. We weren't just waiters, busboys, or guys who worked in laundries. That's how people viewed us until we started playing music. You should have seen us. A bunch of Chinese guys up there playing James Brown. I guess we got into soul music because a lot of us grew up near the projects. North Beach, the Fillmore, Japantown. And that's what was our circle. They listened to soul music, and so did we. Plus, it was a time of civil rights and the Third World Movement. That united us with black music. A former brass player for one of the groups added, it was an awakening for our generation of Asian Americans. The music inspired a sense of community, and it brought Asian Americans together to voice themselves against the Vietnam War and to fight for civil rights. A former band member, Tim Leong, remembered looking out at his audiences. He said, man, they were dressed to the T's. Guys in shirts with 4-inch collars or high boys so heavily starched that they scraped necks raw. You would wear your hair in a pompadour to appear taller. And rhinestone cufflinks, alpaca sweaters, black pointed shoes, and pimp socks. All you needed was a splash of JD's cologne to complete the ensemble. The girls weren't to be outdone, ratting their hair into monumental beehives to match their dates' hairdos. Okay? Jeffrey Chan remembered one girl's hairdo. Her hair was so high that she looked 5'11". The next day at school, she was only 4 feet. There were not many girls who performed with the groups, but Cookie Wong was an exception. She was most likely the first Chinese female jazz singer to be part of a band in those days. Remembering the short skirts, eyeliner, and frosted lipstick, Cookie, who was 18 when she started singing, added, I was very studious, all right, but I liked music. So I just hung around with the guys. But my mother never worried. She knew a lot of their parents. They weren't bad boys. They didn't even smoke. Okay, and I'm going to close with, when I was near the finish of the book, I sent an email to everybody that contributed, and I asked them for, a couple of final words as to answer this question. What did growing up in Chinatown mean to you? My cousin Liz is here, and this is her sister Laura. What happened was they were born in San Francisco, but they moved to Vallejo when they were very young because her dad, my uncle, worked at Hunters Point, and he got transferred to Mare Island. Okay, so they lived in Vallejo. Okay, while she was very young, Laura Wong's family moved from San Francisco to Vallejo. The remainder of Laura's extended family, that's us, remained in the city. Although we didn't live there, I always felt connected to San Francisco's Chinatown. I have many warm memories of experiences shared with my numerous San Francisco cousins. My parents, 2 brothers, sister, that's you, Liz, and I spent many a Christmas, New Year, and Easter vacation, before they called it spring break, playing with cousins and going to fun places around the city. Chinese New Year luncheons meant battered and deep-fried chicken drumsticks, chow mein, and Fanta orange soda. Whenever we went to San Francisco, our aunts and uncles made certain to shower us with love, food, presents, and lacy. For which a dime was typical and a quarter was a fortune. What do we give them now? $5? $10? It's paper, right? None of this quarter stuff. Chinatown always felt comfortable and familiar to me. As soon as we drove across the Bay Bridge, I would anticipate the food, the stores, going to see Chinese movies, and the specific sounds and smells of the neighborhood. We would often have a family meal at Sunblock Q, where my father always ordered a full roast beef platter that included clear soup, dinner rolls, and a choice of ice cream, or orange, apple, or custard pie for dessert. We spent time at different family associations for special occasions. My father liked going to the Long Kong Association as well as those to the Liu, which is their family, Quan, Zhong, and Chu. Those are the 4 family surnames derived from the classical novel, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. We kids must have switched effortlessly from English to Chinese because I don't ever recall being at a loss for words when talking to all the uncles and aunties at the associations. Family, love, history, culture, they are all a very connected set of things that Chinatown instilled in me. And another is from Melody Chen. She's here today, and she said, growing up in Chinatown gave me my heart and soul. In Chinese school, I learned how to write my first characters. China, that's a tough one. Right? It's a tough one. Zhong is easy. All right, air calligraphy. Remember cheating in Chinese school? Okay, so the top part is the hard one. What is it, 11 strokes or something? It's a lot. My non-English speaking parents devoted their lives to hard work in raising my brothers and me to become strong, sensible, and capable adults. They were successful in those efforts. My mother and my father remain with me in all ways every day. I am what they were. From them, I came to understand and appreciate the fullest meaning of integrity. I cherish the rewards of hard work. I value nothing more than I do the love of family. I am a lifetime resident of San Francisco, and I am never far away from my parents or from Chinatown. And I'll wrap it up with what Amy Chung, she's a property manager and lawyer who is deeply involved with the Chinatown community. She did work with Norman for the Development Center, and this is what Amy says, and I'm closing with this. I thought it was a pretty nice place to grow up. Unfortunately, a lot of the new immigrants don't feel the connection to this community. It's a stepping stone for them, a place to land. And the minute they can, they get out, they leave. I find that really sad, actually, because without that connection, what are you culturally and historically? What is the context within which you are living? It's little bits and pieces of history and culture that make you who you are. And in a lot of ways, that's the thing that kind of propels me to want to write a book like this, to kind of preserve and promote the legacy of what we are and what Chinatown is.
Thank you, Edmund. I am Jane Shin, and I'm the executive director here at CHSA, and we want to thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. I think a lot of us understand a lot of what you've shared because we all grew up here, and we have all similar memories, and it's just nice to be able to walk down memory lane with you. Yeah. So, do you have time for questions?
Yeah, I have time for questions. I'm not going back to Kentucky until the 11th.
Does anyone have anything want to add?
Or comments or anything that you think that maybe I or someone else should try to do to keep this kind of little project going to promote where we live and what we were?
Yeah, I think we live in a real special place because a lot of us here, we all have similar memories of here because we grew up here, we grew up in the surrounding areas, and I know that I have my book club here and people I've known since grammar school.
Okay, so this one, I was shocked. Dude. This one, my camera is having a little bit more juice. Oh, so, I'm almost more excited to see what the second half's gonna look like. I have a feeling, oh, this is incomplete. So, well, they're gonna have to wrap. Yeah, I'm home. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The video that I was gonna show you from the after party was pretty much cut off. That battery just died on me, so I had to give it a little bit of juice before I start talking. But I do have like some information about about this one regarding the author, which is like Mr. Wong. Mr. Wong and I suppose. Yeah, well, okay. I'm gonna go with the questions and comments that the community members had put up, had commented about, or questions. Okay, so I'm gonna do with the book, the second part that was not included on this one, which it was a pretty good book, but the publisher, I would say, Arcadia, was like, just cut it in half. And he was like, what? I just put all that work. The publisher was like, no. He said that the second half might come out in about a year and a half or maybe less if he self-published it himself. If he couldn't find any other publishers that can publish the second half. Because he probably didn't want to do it. But if it was a second half, it will probably have a lot of extra features, extra content. So it's gonna be a lot for the baby boomers to enjoy, and I probably include me. It's probably from one of the mid-gen millennials that was born not outside San Francisco Chinatown, but what's pretty much interesting that all this the community members have put up is like one was like in about a generation or a half a generation and a half around the net, the baby boomers were probably not going to be around as much. To try to keep everything transitioning from the current generation that we lived in to the next generation. The next generation is going to be millennials, Generation X, Y, and Z. Well, that's including the post millennials, but yeah. What an interesting time. What an interesting time for the baby boomers to be living at a different era from 1950s and 1960s that they grew up at. Unless they're baby boomers that were born in around mid 1960s, which that's why we had different time. But I did chat with like Miss Miyamoto and about Principal Hops from Cobb, who I found out she passed away, and God rest her soul. And she did told me about it, and she also told me she chat a little bit with Miss Lee and Miss Tong and Miss Garibaldi, and presumably Dr. Fagan, which I probably haven't talked to her about that one. It's probably ironic. It's pretty strange that that I knew her long enough since Cobb and Wong burgers. That's I know it's unrelatable, but it's a very personal story of mine. But yeah, and and a lady, and also there was a neighbor who grew up around the time the baby boomers it did. Well, not necessarily grew up in Chinatown, but had friends that went to that been in Chinatown, or they have or the baby boomers have kids that they went to George Washington and High School and Lowell and Lincoln High School or Galileo. So it's an interesting topic that I'm impressed that some of the baby boomers actually went there, or that some of the late gen baby boomers actually went to the schools that were outside of Chinatown, which is interesting, and yeah, especially the especially the immigrants that were living in Chinatown but migrated to Richmond District and Sunset District because it was much bigger and much more larger and probably easier to go around than in Chinatown, which that was another factor that even new immigrants are using it as a stepping stone, which sucks and true, but I still come back. I still come back to Chinatown to do whatever I can to support Chinatown and do this and do exactly like I'm doing right now, putting on a video and probably share it with you guys with the entire community on YouTube. Well, probably through other Facebook groups and all that stuff. But oh well. Well, that's enough. That's enough for me, and I hope you enjoyed what's on that video. Until then, for the Chinatown baby boomer kids that were there, don't worry. The Generation X, Y, Z, and even post Generation X, Y, and Z will take care of Chinatown. It'll probably not be what you remembered, but I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I do have a family member, a couple of family member relatives living in Chinatown. Well, first came to Chinatown and then they raised their own families. Well, my mom's cousins were born in Chinatown and they moved out somewhere. But yeah, it's interesting times. I like the after party too. It's really entertaining and stuff. That's why I didn't put it. That's why I didn't put the questions and comments in the video, because it was basically all the residents have feeling the same. In Chinatown are feeling the same sentiments. The Bay Area or San Franciscan folks out there were sharing the same sentiments about Chinatown, and they wanted to see Chinatown be evergreen, be everlasting. But yeah, Japantown too. But we're gonna see what's gonna happen in the next generation or two. This is going to be interesting. So, anyways, I'm gonna end this video, and I always say this to nerds, nerdettes, bookwormers, and I would say book freaks. I would say enjoyed reading this book, and we're more excited to see the second part of this book. It'll be just as, at least be more better than what you'll be seeing on the first part. Oh yeah. The second part with Esther features will be so good. So, bye.